Yeah.
All right. Well, we are live on YouTube. I am Leslie Elliott Boyce. I'm speaking with Cari Bartholomew and Christine Sefein-Wolk. And it is early morning for people in the Pacific Northwest. It's before 9, so I don't know how many people are watching YouTube before 9, but pop on if you're around and we'll have a chat. We haven't done one of these in a while, but this will be on our Sanity Check playlist after we finish the stream. And that's a series that the three of us have done for going on 3 years now. It's pretty incredible. I don't know how many we've done, but for a while we were trying to hit once a month or even more. And lately we've been a little more sparse, but it's always nice to see the two of you.
You as
It's
well.
always good to be here. We're very excited to tape another one of these shows.
Yeah, that's fun. Um, so Cari, you were talking about Islam a bit, and this is something that we hear more and more about as we've had more and more immigration, and there are things heating up in the world. So I'm curious for your thoughts. Do you want to kind of lay out
Yeah.
kind of some direction for the conversation?
Well, there's so much to it. We have a lot of George Soros funded organizations, right? So we specifically something called open societies, meaning no borders. They'll show. Okay. A lot of people use compassion and say there shouldn't be any borders because of compassion. Now, the two places where that becomes an issue is that it's selective compassion, because just a couple of days ago, I was able to interview somebody who came here from Eritrea, and there are thousands of people who come from Eritrea, and in that process, are getting kidnapped by Muslims, and some of them can pay ransom. Other people can't pay ransom. Those who can't pay ransom, they're having their organs donated without anesthesia. According to him and according to this massive organization of people, this is happening.
Well, that wouldn't be donation, would it? That's
Right,
theft.
yeah. Organ
Are they being
harvested,
they're being
yes.
killed and having their organs
If
harvested?
they can't pay the ransom.
Good grief.
So in terms
Wow.
of compassion, people are saying we need to be compassionate. You constantly get called a bigot. We have a lot of this being pushed in Utah. So Utah is about to turn blue based on this subject.
Hmm.
But listening to these people and having them say, his name is Philemon Rezoning, and listening to him say that they see us as dogs and monkeys, and that's why they have no problem with lying to us. And the way that it works, and I've been listening to a lot of imams talk, is that they openly say we need to be kind, we need to be pleasant, we need to be approachable while we are the minority. And then when we're
Yes.
no longer the minority, things change. So there's another man, his name is Mike Benz. Have you heard of him?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Mike Benz was just showing the link between Barack Obama's father and Mamdani's father.
Mm.
And they were both brought here at the same time under the same program. And these are people who I would say have actual disdain for America, right? And that is the same thing so we're bringing over people who are not, I would say, are not compatible. I think that is a generous way of putting it, but not compatible, because what we used to think of as immigration is people who wanted desperately to be here and also had a desire to assimilate. And now, even our students in school are being taught, especially through clubs like, ooh, here we go, let's get myself in trouble, Latinos in Action, clubs like Black student unions. They're not taught to assimilate. And what people will say is we're just preserving culture. But if you're preserving culture with a sense of also teaching that America is oppressive, that's, I think, where the line is drawn.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we cater to every single group, and especially this group that is looking, that doesn't even believe in woke policies, right?
They don't.
So we know what happens in other countries. If if you're gay, it's not a meme only that people get thrown off buildings. But yet here, Mamdani says, I'm going to create the most affirming culture. Why? And I think the reason why is because then there's less of us.
Mm.
As we drug our kids, they become sterilized. And so I think when there's less of us, I honestly think that's all it comes down to for the affirming culture, is just less of us, more of them, because they are overpopulating. They're having lots of children. Minnesota is an interesting place, full of corruption. Did you guys hear about the case where the person or the group, and this is happening a lot, where they're being, during COVID, there was a bunch of different kinds of funding for different groups, especially autism.
Yeah.
So they were telling their people to come over and say you're autistic, say your children are autistic, and then they were taking the money, and then the money is being funneled back to their country and given to terrorist groups.
Yes.
And there's a mountain of evidence. An entire jury said immediately, the evidence is way too strong. And then one woke judge, and I think that that's a good place because we have the same thing. One woke judge said, I forgive them.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine. They're free to go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So my son always pushes back, and you guys are welcome to push back, but I say we're being colonized.
Mm-hmm.
The same people who are like, colonization is bad, the world is, America is awful, they've done all of this terrible things. In the meantime, we're being colonized.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not supposed to say a thing.
Yeah, I'm not going to push back on that because it's exactly how I wish I had actually written this down and paid a little bit more attention, but it was a video that was sent to me. I can't find it now. Of course, where, somebody was sitting down with, I guess, what are they called again, Cari? Kind of the head of a mosque is an imam.
Like the imam?
Imam, yes.
Yeah.
Was sitting down with one of them, and he basically laid it out very clearly and said, look, we vote left, we vote Democrat, and we encourage, the Democrats, to, that we donate money, all of this stuff, and we encourage young people to vote Democrat as well, because they're very inclusive of everything that all of us are doing. They're very inclusive of our culture, but we don't believe in a single thing that the left is doing. It is breaking our laws. It's breaking our traditions, our way of life. But in order for us to be able to get in there and to be able to fundamentally change the values and the structure of all of these different communities and of the United States and the West as a whole, is to be in positions of power. And for us to do that, we've got to have enough people that are Democrats or have voted blue or have voted, very far progressive, for us to be able to put our people in. Because as soon as that happens, and we're powerful enough, then we can usher in Sharia law, because that's our ultimate goal. The ultimate goal isn't to have, let's all live together in peace and harmony. You go over to one of these countries and you're, gays and trans for Palestine, or gays for, fill in the blank for Islam, they're going to hang you. Okay. You're lucky if you get shot to death. Okay. We're talking, if they still believe in public hangings. This is not something that's old and barbaric in those communities. So all of these people that are running around uneducated about what it means to be fully Islamic and actually grasp. I'm not talking about peaceful Muslims who,
Right.
come here and just share their food and their customs and whatever. I'm talking about people that have absorbed and really taken in and really transformed themselves They don't understand that at the core of that is a lot of violence and is a lot of taking over at any cost possible, because that is an ultimate sacrifice to God. That's ultimately where you're going to, your heaven, your place is waiting for you, and that's the ultimate way to do it. So to me, all of this ignorance that's running around talking about, gays for this and trans for that, have no clue what they're actually saying. They love it. They love it. They love the ignorance. They love the willful ignorance, the lack of even wanting to learn why this is a bad thing. It's so pervasive. And I think that's why I think I initially wanted to talk about this. I don't have thousands of resources to cite, unfortunately, but I also have family who live in the Middle East still. And I have family who immigrated from the Middle East. So I can tell you the ways that they think, and I'm not Muslim, my family isn't Muslim, they're Christian. So obviously they have a very skewed and one view way of thinking about the Muslim culture. So I realized that that's a biased view. I also understand that these imams that are talking to these people on podcasts and sharing what their ultimate goals are also aligns with some of the radical ways of thinking. And if we consider them to be radical, because there's violence that's being not only tolerated, but initiated and, supported, then it matches up. It all kind of lines up.
Yeah, Christine, I was going to ask you about your family's experience with this, being from Egypt, and what's that been for your family? What kind of education have you received personally from family about these cultures?
Yeah, I mean, my parents came over partly because at the time they came over, my parents came over 47 years ago. At that time, Egypt still considered themselves to be a secular country. However, it was a 93% Muslim population, and they had started to kind of infiltrate the government. So although they were still technically secular, they saw what was coming. My mother will tell you that she did not go back to visit Egypt for the first, 20 years that she had been here, or 15 years that she had been here, because she was devastated by what she had experienced. She had seen churches blow up. She had seen riots in the streets. She had seen a lot of violence that was originated from a lot of the what we would call the terrorist groups here, what they would call there the radical, progressive well, they're really actually the traditional ones, but the people that were very radicalized in following kind of the violence mandate. So my parents were very afraid of people that were very religious and very devout in their practice of the values of the Muslim faith. Because of that is a big reason why they left. The other reason why they left is because of the opportunities in America, and their goal was to come here and to assimilate into the culture. So there was no, there was an idea of we're going to keep our culture. We want to keep we love the food and we love the music, and we want to dance and hire belly dancers to come and dance at our weddings and all of that. And it's wonderful. And we have a great time, and we're American. And that was a big part of it. We value the American values. We value being free. We value, freedom of speech. We value all of these other things. We don't value, violence and anything that's wokeism related. We don't. My parents were about assimilation. And at that time, a lot of immigrants that came over from the Middle East were about assimilation. They were running from these regimes because they didn't believe in what was going on over there. So at the time, that's what my parents and the people that were in their circles, the extended families, and this is on both sides, both my mother and my father's sides, that's what they were living. They were living in a place that was very violent. They were living in a place that wasn't safe to travel to. They were living in a time in which you weren't going to be protected. Here, you can go sue people. Okay, let's go sue for not protecting, me. I'm suing the police department. I'm going to sue this person. Great. You can sue whoever you want in the United States. You can't sue anybody over there because they're all corrupt. So my parents escaped that and came here and for a better life and all of that stuff. My family who still live there tend to stay in their own community, and they just avoid being around Muslim groups. That's just what they do. They stay away from it. They stay in the villages that are, a little bit further out. They try not to get involved in politics too much, although I do have an uncle that is involved in politics in a different way. But for the most part, they just avoid those areas. And they try to stay very locked in to the small communities that they do have. And they try to not ruffle any feathers. They just try to be invisible. That's the bottom line. They don't want to be seen. Okay. This whole idea, we want to be seen and all of this kind of thing, not over there. Okay. There's a lot of warnings to us as Americans. If you want to travel to certain parts of the Middle East, go with an American travel group so that you stay in areas where there aren't going to be very many violent attacks. That's not even completely fully true. I mean, in the 80s, when people were traveling back to Egypt to visit the pyramids and all of the history, which I would love to do myself, they were blowing up American tour buses. This was no surprise. It was on the news. We even heard about it here in the States, and our family reported to us the things that were happening. So that's a very long story there, but that's the historical context behind my family's story specifically.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that experience. That's really, it's fascinating, and what a contrast that kind of trying to keep from getting attention for what makes you different.
Yes.
Hi to folks in the chat. Hey, Marie Picard, nice to see you here today. Hi, Cody. Hey, it's me, Cody. Georgina Whitby, nice to see you here. Clue Studio, thank you so much for the super chat. It's great to see you today. Stacy L says, great to hear you call this out, Christine. And Georgina Whitby says, the kind of multiculturalism that always gets mocked, food and festivals, is the best kind. That's really nice. Yeah, it is. It is nice to be able to hold on to some of those traditions, but also become a part of the place where you live, become a part of where you are. Cari, when we started the conversation, you were talking about George Soros. Would you go back and flesh that out a little bit? What does George Soros have to do with Islam?
Well, I think that everything that we're looking at has to do with authoritarianism. I think that's ultimately why the two groups work well together, and why the attack on freedom, right? Because that's what Christine was talking about. Freedom is not something that you can afford if you're an authoritarian. So you've got the left, and honestly, there are people on the right who are authoritarian as well, right? I mean, there are people who feel like only their way is the only way that you should do something, but more so on the left. It's funny to me that you were talking about how in another country they don't want to be seen. I feel that way too. I think a lot of people feel like, just leave me alone. Just let us be where we are. So Soros is extremely authoritarian. So he's come out here, or he's funded NGOs, right? This is what we learned with USAID. So NGOs are funded that seem extremely compassionate. That's at least how in Utah they get in by. It's like, oh, we just need to let everybody come in. We're supposed to be this global loving thing where, there's no rules whatsoever because rules are harmful. Meanwhile, they're extremely authoritarian. If you don't think exactly like us, we will stomp you out. So what we had happen is we just got redistricted in Utah. And what happened is a group called Mormon Women for Ethical Government sued our legislators. So basically they have neutered them. They have completely neutered them and said, the people want this. Now, they won with massive amounts of funding with only 4 counties. But if you've got groups that are sitting outside, funded again, so we have all sorts of, I think I've sent you guys multiple of these little cards where it'll say like stronger together or united we stand or whatever else, right? And they've got the funding to do this. Where's the funding coming from? And we know that the funding is coming from things like Open Society Foundation. So that means when your universities, when the kids get out of school, when the students get out of school, somebody's standing there saying their version, their one-sided version of, don't you want to be a compassionate human being? Sign. Well, we're a bunch of grassroots volunteers. We cannot compete with that. So meanwhile, the supposedly what most people would have thought was the reddest state is, we've just gotten ourselves a blue district. So what happened is this group, Women for Ethical Government, they sued, and one single judge, instead of choosing any of the maps that the legislators made, went with the group that the plaintiffs made, which was Mormon Women for Ethical Government and the League of Women Voters. But when you just type into Grok, what connections do they have? You like, are they connected to George Soros? All of these lists come up of, yes, they absolutely are.
Mm.
So, and it again, it always comes down to authoritarianism. We will take from you everything that you have. And so what is the link between that and Islam? The same. We will take from you everything that you have. And the crazy thing, I was listening to a mayor in Minnesota. He's recently elected and he's Islamic and he's Muslim and a Christian. They were going to change a street road to something that honored Hamas. And a Christian man said, please don't do that. I mean, this is, you're praising terrorism. And the guy said, you're a Christian. The mayor said, you're a Christian, you're a bigot, you don't have room to speak in Minnesota, which, you know, when we were young, Minnesota was floppy hats and it's freezing cold and very, very white. And now it's not. And you want to talk about people who hide and don't say anything because these people, and then the guy laughs and he goes, Sharia just means law. You guys are afraid of the law? What's wrong with law? Well, the law of laws is something we should be afraid of. Something that is so authoritarian that we have a law of laws. I want less government. I mean, as an American, I want freedom. And I don't have a lot. I'm not like, you know, we're not rolling in the dough here. But what we have, I want to be able to keep. I just watched my the UEA, so the Utah Education Association, put out a post that is so blatantly against charter schools, homeschools, and religious private schools, and was just like, we want no money going to those. We fund the majority of education. Well, then you go to the NEA, and the NEA is openly saying that half of America is fascist. The head of the NEA, Randy Weingarten, just wrote a book called Why Fascists Hate Teachers.
Wow.
So that's a lot of authoritarianism. Too much. Which I think,
I haven't looked at them in a long time. We looked at them together a while back.
Yeah. So they wrote a book. She wrote a book, Why Fascists Hate Teachers. And you just go, why are we doing this? Why are we sending so that half of the country can be seen as fascists? And honestly, I think it's more than that, but so many people are afraid to say anything. I was listening, as far as assimilation goes, I now have another thing that I do, which is work with young college kids and at my church, and we're trying to get them to start kind of a roundtable podcast. And yesterday I was late. I didn't know the subject, and what the subject was something I had written. My pastor was reading it to them. And it was about not being accepted in the Black community, right? And so he went around the room and he said, how much culture should we adopt? Like our music and our food and, you know, our dancing and whatever. How much should we adopt versus how much should that define us? How much should that be our full identity? And the two kids who were in the classroom or in the whatever, the church room, who were white, they said, you know, it doesn't bother us. It doesn't bother us that there's these clubs, but we had to pull it out of them. And so then I looked at the kids who were not white and I said, how about you? How about if I get a full month of celebration of me, but you don't get to celebrate your Tongan heritage, or you don't get to celebrate your Mexican heritage? And they were like, that would be unfair. And I was like, why would you? So I looked at the two kids who were, you know, very Anglo-Saxon, because we went around the room and said what our cultures were. And I looked at those two kids and I said, do you think you've been taught that it's unacceptable for you to object?
Hmm.
And I do think that. I think that oikophobia is a real thing. I've got a young student who says, I hate white people. And he's white. And I just look at him and I'm just like, okay, so we're dealing with oikophobia here. And because I gave that to my kids as a vocab word. But
So it's
they've been taught
oikophobia is hating white people?
oikophobia is hating your homeland.
Oh, your homeland. Interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's hating your homeland or where you've come from. And it's so prevalent. So
I
yeah.
talked with this gentleman last week before. His name is Ed Roos, and he was a principal at a school in Seattle.
Yes.
Did you see that one, Carrie? I think you commented on it.
I actually would love to talk to him.
Yeah, I'd like to hear your thoughts. I really like Ed. I think he's a very well-intentioned and earnest person. And as we were talking, there were a couple of points where I wanted to, I would have loved to have detoured and had a discussion about some of his positions or philosophies, but I tried to restrain myself because I really wanted to let him get his story out, but
Right.
couldn't help but go into it just a little bit. Some of the racial and sex education points that,
Right.
you know, he's and I heard his standpoint as being rather
Progressive.
still progressive. Yeah, progressive, although he's been hurt by progressivism going too far
Right.
and seeing what it, you know, how reductive and illogical these ideas really are when they're allowed to play out. But he's still kind of holding on to some of those positions. And one of them was around celebrating diversity for everybody but the white kids. And I said, you know, he's talking about how they would put up, I guess, posters or do presentations to celebrate all these different cultures. And I said, what about the white kids? Is there any kind of celebration for them? And he said, well, no, because they see plenty of representation all around them. And I think this needs to be challenged because that's not true. That's not true at all. I mean, and I pointed out at that same time, we had in Olympia, which is just a little bit south of Seattle, I remember these headlines about this hate crime where people had put hate speech all over a public park, and it was a couple of stickers that said it's okay to be white. That was hate speech. At the same time that these Seattle public schools are saying, be proud to be Black, be proud of your Latino heritage, be proud of your BIPOC, whatever, you know, but you can say proud Black woman, but you can't even say it's okay to be white.
Right.
And I think that this idea that we're all swimming in celebration of white culture, I mean, that is just, it couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when I watched it, my first response was nope.
Yeah.
I was like, you don't understand how reductive you are, and also how you're fostering these groups that are given permission to have an outgroup. So not only, I mean, the hatred that I hear from minorities who embrace these ideas is painful. I just sit there going, how are you okay with being such a hate-filled human being, having such resentment? Because usually, and I will say that in the last couple of months, I have seen right-wing racism. There are people who are like, Cari only uses, there are people who think that I have blackmailed people to get positions over white people, which is insane. Like, it's 100% not who I am, but there are people who think that. But the majority of bigotry that I see that is absolutely permitted and can't be questioned, and you're just supposed to sit there and take it, comes especially from Black women. That's and that's because they're empowered to. Okay, if you go to school and you're empowered, that's what I'm saying about these kids. These kids are sitting there going, no, it doesn't bother me. They're not saying, oh no, it doesn't bother me at all. They're like, I mean, like, it doesn't bother me.
I would say that
it does.
even more than Black women, it's white women who are allies.
There's that.
That's a big one,
I
because
can't
there's
say
this
more than
rejection.
Yeah. I can't say more than, because when people need to equate my amount of melanin, then that tends to come from the Black community.
Because you're not Black enough to have an opinion.
And the funny thing is that it's a very specific part of the Black community. It's the well-to-do Black community. It is not the poor. It's the well-to-do that supposedly don't exist, right? They need to prove, I'm gonna get myself in trouble, but they seem to need to prove that they're a part of the community while they're the gatekeepers of what it is to be Black. But the poor, like the poor that just go to work and, are working at Target, working at Walmart, working in a factory, whatever else, they've got friends of every single color and they don't care about this. And those are the people that I relate to. This upper class Black person who needs to be a permanent victim, almost because they've got the same guilt as the awful.
Yeah.
Right? The affluent white liberal woman. They have the same amount of guilt. Well, we have privilege, and likely, while they've looked down on people, other people have looked down on them for being, you don't get us. That whole you not like us or they not like us song. And so it's all very divided, but it's also kind of a royalty or a caste system that they need to protect. But they're the nastiest, in my opinion.
That's so interesting. I think something you said a few minutes ago about the white kids basically being this one group that doesn't get an out group to identify. That's really interesting. And I think that anger and that hostility towards another group that's being encouraged is scapegoating, but it's offering a way to discharge your own negative emotions in the direction of somebody else. It's, white people's fault or whatever.
I think they want these kids, quite frankly, to commit suicide.
The white kids.
That's what I think. I think that they believe we're overpopulated by the white people, and there's no way that you can care about mental health and let these kids have to deal with this. So, and if you look statistically, I believe statistically, sorry, my dogs are going crazy. Just a second. Jack! Never mind, he's not going to. There's my Hassan Piker moment. Problems. He doesn't have a collar on, obviously. If he did, he wouldn't be doing what he's doing.
I can barely hear him. He's not that loud for us. Yeah.
But I think that the end goal here is, so I'll tell you, I spent a small part of Thanksgiving in a psych ward, not for me, visiting someone. And it was, there were about 10 kids, and I mean kids, they're about 23 years old and younger. And every single one of them, their talking points were leftist TikTok points. Like these kids who are, it costs money to stay in a place like that, right? And they're like, I want to manifest a world where money doesn't matter.
Yes.
And you're sitting there going, how entitled your parents or we as taxpayers are paying for you to be here, you know? And I do. I think it keeps me up at night that there are people who think that our kids should just not exist. Like, you guys have been through it. You guys have been through cancellation. Imagine being a kid.
Well, you know, it's like when people say, you know, the left or the far left or the racists, those are the ones. I mean, I had a friend who I'm not in touch with anymore, but she's Indian. So her parents came from India and wanted her to marry an Indian man. She wanted to marry a white man. But she refused to marry anybody who wasn't white. She didn't want to marry an Indian. She would never marry a black man. She'd never marry a Latino. She'd never marry an Asian. It had to be white. He had to be a certain height. He had to have a certain amount of income. She is also very progressive, very far left, very much about, you know, trans and LGBTQ and, you know, BLM. And she was all over it during 2020, the summer of love, when, you know, basically our streets were burning to the ground. And she's living in a $5 million house. And I sat there, and this is partly why we're not in touch anymore. And I sat there and thought, how hypocritical of you to sit behind the pearly white gates of your community where you have horses and you have money flowing in, and your husband is the CEO of a huge manufacture computer chips. So you can all imagine the kind of money that flows in her home. And you can sit there and say that white is better for you, not rules for thee, not for me.
Right.
And then chastise anybody else who criticizes anybody of color, who criticizes the people who are lower class. But would you give that up to go marry a poor black man who had the heart of gold and who was a wonderful human being? Absolutely not. He didn't fill out his application and present his resume properly to you. He's not on the list. This is the type of stuff I can't stand. This is the type of stuff that makes me fly off the handle because it's extremely hypocritical. It's extremely racist, classist, I mean, misogynistic, even in every possible way. And this is a leftist person who votes blue Democrat.
Yeah.
And she's a West Coast elite, right? That's what they talk about when they talk about the West Coast elites. That is what I cannot stand, actually, more than anything, because those are luxury beliefs. You have the luxury of believing all of this and of voting that way, not because you actually really believe it. You get to just be an ally. You don't have to live it every day. You get to just be an ally to these people. But your standards are not the same, and you're not going to settle for anything other than being part of the 1%, or the half of, you know, the 0.5% even.
Yeah.
I can't relate to that. I can't.
That's what we're dealing with. So that goes back to the Mormon Women for Ethical Government. That is who they are. They are women who are high above, and they love to like screenshot themselves working at a Somali refugee center, right? But meanwhile, they have, you sit there going, oh, one of our senators, Senator Mike Lee, posted and he said, this group came to us and they wanted something. And when we pushed back, they said, we all know that white patriarchal men are the cause of our problems. And I'm like, every single one of you is married, except I take it back. There's one, because we also have this weird thing where we have a segregated Black LDS church, which I find very interesting. So and so that one is ran by one woman and her husband, who are, yeah, exactly what you just said. But it's like spreading lamb's blood. I can do and be whatever I want. And a lot of people, especially when it has to do with a warped view of a religion, they feel that they deserve this, that they're given this ability by God to be the high priestess of all things woke, and their reward is their wealth.
Mhm.
Meanwhile, they are, in my opinion, mentally enslaving.
Mhm.
They are causing so much harm.
Mhm.
And now their thing is bring in the open borders, let everybody come. And I kind of have to wonder how many of them own NGOs
Mhm.
that are bringing in what's happening here. Like when
Mhm.
they say, "Oh, here I am at the refugee center," is it your NGO that's getting a bunch of extra money for that? Who
Mhm.
knows? I don't know, but it's interesting because they're even harming the working class. The working class is like, I can barely afford it. My groceries are fully up to here. Meanwhile, they're saying, but you're not compassionate if you don't want to open borders. Well, guess what? I want to pay my
Well,
own bills.
and those Catholic charities were at the borders helping people cross over illegally.
Yeah,
That's where some of that money was going. It wasn't towards, helping our citizens and feeding the hungry and the poor and the whomever. It was about helping some of those people, and those people that were crossing borders were owned by the cartels on both sides of the aisle. So what was that really about? I mean, a lot of them are just shell organizations, right, to sort of launder and filter,
yeah.
money and gain. And I know some of this may seem conspiratorial to some people, but this is really
You can
not,
look
I
it up.
mean, you follow the money and you can actually see that. It's not that difficult to make a connection between these kinds of things. And that's where some of those Catholic charities that were down there, that's what they were doing.
Well,
So,
I want to share this again.
yeah,
I was sharing some of the NEA website earlier when you
yeah.
were talking, Carrie, just for people who are watching. So if you're just listening, you'll miss the visuals. But just this talking about education, what are kids being taught by their teachers? And I mean, this is a really chilling picture. This is the front of their
Yes,
immigration page. It's we
yes,
are the future.
yes.
I mean, this is like, I don't
Well,
know.
because they intend to snuff out whites
Yeah,
completely.
it's the white
Yeah.
replacement thing.
I would
They intend to
emphasis that
snuff them
it's
out
I would
altogether.
emphasis that on that poster, the we is what's emphasized.
Mm,
It's all
let me see.
minorities,
Yeah.
and then it says we are the future.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
On the American flag, what does that say?
Yeah.
I mean,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that's like the quintessential representation, of the United States.
Yeah.
There
This
you
is
have the
just like
snuffing
this is
out.
NEA.
Yeah.
And
Tools
I
for justice.
if there's a better advertisement for homeschooling, I just don't know what it is.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. In the chat, Later Holmes says BIPOC, LOL, what a dumb word. I'm like, are you talking about a computer program? And then he says, it imagines a non-existent solidarity between all non-whites. And I think that's such a brilliant point.
There's
You'll
so
never
much.
catch me using that word
Yes,
unironically
no.
or without quoting it.
The racism among the Middle Eastern groups is worse than any of the racism we've seen in the United States. It exists. It is still there today. If you are, a Syrian, well, because I'm half Syrian. If you're Syrian and you're living in Egypt, you would get harassed and maimed and who knows what. The Middle Eastern countries themselves, the racism there is extremely high and they're very tribalistic. Look at Afghanistan, even. There are tribes and there are warring tribes that's the racism is like pervasive in these areas. So
Well, and I know even like the Chinese and Japanese will have
yes.
massive problems. I had a friend, my daughter dated a guy actually who was Japanese. They went to a Chinese restaurant together, and everybody was Chinese born, and there was already like side eyes and animosity. It was
Yeah.
really interesting.
Yes.
It was interesting to see. And so one of the worst one of the most ridiculous racial words I've heard since all of this this new CRT thing started, is brown people. Because what is that? That's like so many different ethnicities and cultures you're talking about, and you're just going to lump them all into brown. I mean, black is already reductive, white is reductive, but brown, I mean, that's like most of the world, and there's such vastly different cultures that you're just throwing into one bucket. I'm offended
Yeah.
by the reductionism.
Well, Obama decided during his years that he was going to call Middle Eastern people Caucasian. So Middle Easterners don't have a box really
Mm,
on most of the, well, maybe now it's a little bit different, but for a long time on most of those census things and whatnot that you have to fill out your ethnicity, we were, you know, commanded to fill out that, you know, to check the white box, which I never did. But I don't remember what the thinking was behind that at the time. It was nefarious, no doubt, but that's what, so there was no, we weren't even enough to be considered a minority is sort of what they said. Talk about reductive. I mean, I haven't, I don't know.
The crazy thing
yeah.
is, why do other people get to decide what you are? Like the woman who was just like, you are not black enough. And then the other people who are like, oh, she's actually a black supremacist who's pretending that she's not. And I'm like, well, here's the thing. Everywhere I go, people have they make an assumption, right? And most people truly, I still believe this, although the numbers seem to be larger than I ever thought, but most people do not care. They go, oh, and they move on. And
Mhm.
that's it. And that for most people, character matters. They have intentionally gotten rid of that idea.
Mhm.
They've intentionally said, no, you have to focus on this and you have to focus on this. And I'm like, no, I don't. And I refuse to. And it's the hill I'll die on. Like,
Mhm.
nobody has to be reduced. Crappy people come in every color. So I mean,
Yes, that's right. Crappy people come in every color. I should name this episode that. I will actually. When I was talking with Ed Roos, Carrie, since you heard that one, I told a
yeah,
story about a online mobbing experience in
right.
West Seattle, which is it's kind of a middle to upper middle class area.
Yeah.
Everybody's pretty,
Okay.
yeah, Alki all the way down to,
Yeah.
the southern part of West Seattle. But like Arbor Heights and that whole
Yeah.
community was on West Seattle moms, right? So
Yeah.
it's this bunch of like stay home moms
But it's not
who,
white center.
no, probably not White Center wouldn't be
Right.
included. I mean, maybe, but
Right.
Burien, I don't know.
Right.
Um, so for the most part, it's pretty posh. And the other woman I mentioned just really briefly in my story to Ed about how this there was a post about a black woman whose daughter's hair was complimented by a white woman, and then everybody is piling on the white woman in the post, like, oh my God, how horrible. She just wanted to own their black bodies. And it was just like this whole thing about just totally racialized that experience of looking at a little girl and saying what beautiful hair she has. And the black mom was seething with rage. She went home and she was so angry. She was so angry, you know? And the other woman, it was me and one other woman that got piled on because we said something, we posted counter to the mob. The other woman got torn to shreds. I mean, this is all virtual. It's not literal. But it had a real impact for being not black enough to have an opinion. She had mixed race privilege. And that was the first time I'd ever heard somebody talk like that. It was the first time I'd ever seen that kind of language. I was, of course, like this white supremacist snowflake, but
Yeah.
she was not, it was all focused on how she was black, but not black enough to have an opinion on this.
Right.
It was really pretty stunning.
Yeah.
And I just want to say one thing back to real quick, the story I told about my friend, because I feel
Mhm.
like this is important. I don't think there's anything wrong, quite frankly, with her wanting to be with a rich man. I don't judge that part, rich and white. My issue is the hypocrisy. That's, I think, what I want to get at. So we don't have to keep beating this with a dead horse. But if this is what she's looking for, then that's fine. That's okay. That's great. Go find it. There's nothing wrong with that. You have a type, go for your type, and don't, and own it. Own that that's what you want. Own that that's what you're looking for. Don't try to present something that you are not because you are trying to be an ally. That is where I had the issue. So that's all I want to say, is that, you're perfectly fine and just, anybody's fine to have whatever it is that they're looking for and what they're attracted to. I don't like the hypocrisy. That's what it is.
There's so much hypocrisy in all of it, Christine. That's the
Yes.
thing that's frustrated me so much since the beginning. Like this, when I went back to graduate school and I start hearing this kind of drivel from a psychology professor about your identity categories and how, white people are oppressors and Black people are oppressed. And that's just as simple as that. And, the thing was, I tried to argue this. If we're basing this on principles and we're having an intelligent, rational discussion about this, then the reason racism is bad is that false assumptions are going to be made about the quality of your character based on something superficial.
Yes.
So why the hell are we doing that to white people?
Yes.
Shut up. It's
Yes.
just like, it's just
Yes.
so crazy. The hypocrisy is
I think the human condition, unless you have something like faith or something, the human condition is to oppress. Because I cannot imagine that if you gave brown or Black people the opportunity to have whips or plantations, by the way in which they're talking and treating people, and I need to be super clear, not all, but the people who talk this way, right? I can't imagine that they wouldn't be just as bad as everything that they project these other people are. And in terms of doing the work has been done. That's why we sit here and we're shocked. People treat each other this way. It's because we've already done the work. So these people, I think that they're just trying to constantly absolve themselves. And the hypocrisy it's that ick factor. It's like, just stop it. You like money. You like pleasure. Fine. That's fine.
Well, and you don't want to do a better job of being a human yourself, and you want somebody else to blame for it.
Right. So it's like, just, if you would shut up and enjoy your life. And so I think that
that's
to
right.
come full circle, the Obamas and the Mamdanis are freaking champagne socialists.
That's exactly right.
They're like, gimme, 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 gimme. I want all these things. I'm not going to speak unless they get this much money, right? And
this is good enough for you.
Exactly. You have to be, what did Michelle say? You have to be happy with a smaller piece of the pie. Americans.
Yeah. Well, Obama belongs to a golf club that costs $250,000 to join. He got a free membership to. It is not too far from where I live, and I see the man playing golf because his security detail goes right by my house every time he's out there playing with his caddy and his whomever and whatever. And it's not, I don't belong to this club, just to be very clear, but it's not too far. I live in an area where there's a lot of clubs around, outdoor space. It's very rare in California, anyway, that's my point, is that he comes driving through with his security detail, couple of,
living like a king, living like an absolute king.
Like a king. Yes, I'm walking my dog down the street and here he comes. And anyhow.
And speaking of Obama and Michelle Obama, the stuff that she's been doing lately, it's like she's trying to milk the dry teat of CRT for just a few more drops, like let's just get people angry about our hair again. And you see this incredibly wealthy woman, incredible, like, you want to talk privilege. I hate that word now. It's like a poison word to me, but if you want to talk about privilege, she's so privileged, and she's just she's just mining that racial hatred a little bit more, talking about resentment towards, you know, her how she's been oppressed as a Black woman. And it's just, it's really quite incredible to see people
Yes.
peddling that
They're
shtick.
still
Like,
laughing it
why,
up, though.
who's, I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
was going to say something rude, but I'm not going to do it. Who is she in the pocket of? Who's got her
Yes.
number that's making
Yes.
her do that tour?
Yes.
I'm concerned
They're
that
all owned by
she might
someone.
run. I'm concerned that she might run in the next election because, like I said, if a bunch of kids who are genuinely hurting and they're in the psych ward are repeating the talking points,
Mhm.
then it's
Be
definitely
happier
not
with
dead.
less
CRT is not on its last leg. It's just rebranded. But I mean, it's a cult. It's a cult, and she's the high priestess.
They've got to keep us busy with all this crap while bigger things are happening on a global
Yeah.
stage.
Yeah.
This is kind of the bottom line, I think,
Yeah.
in general. So we're all busy running around dealing with all of this while major things are happening in a global sense that are probably much more pervasive and much more nefarious than we
Mhm.
can imagine. I that's just
Mhm.
kind of
Well, we've been chatting for about an hour, so maybe we should wrap up here, but I'll read a couple of chats first. Oceana 2385 says you should see West Seattle Next Door. It's a horror show. I can only imagine. There are a bunch of Nazis there. And yeah, I can only imagine after COVID. I was on Next Door during COVID for a little bit. And that's when I got off because it was just a bunch of people tattling on teenagers for meeting each other in the streets. You know, it was just horrible. Everybody's judgy. That spells moon says there's no integrity. Views shift constantly based on who's saying it. It's so disheartening and frustrating. Yeah, I agree. And then there was one, Adam Worrell says Robin DiAngelo has a lot to answer for. Nechama Gluck says, I disagree with Cari here. I don't think it's our nature to oppress. I do think, given certain conditions and incentives, some gravitate to oppressing, especially those who stay in a victim mentality.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you all so
might
much.
be right. I mean, it's a hard one, but that's a hard one. But it just seems to me that people really very, very quickly became willing to accept that it's okay to hate your neighbor.
Happy JF says I moved from just north of White Center to Federal Way. Nice. It's a pretty area. White Center's not the greatest, but just north of White Center, that would be what, Arbor Heights. That's a nice spot. Could be nice. Depends. It's a mixed area there. But yeah, it's great to get all your feedback in the chat, you guys. I hope y'all are having a great day, and I hope you have a good rest of your week. And Cari and Christine, it's always lovely to talk with you guys. If I had, I gave out my Etsy shop info the other day, but I've since unlisted all of my listing. I made a bunch of sales. Thank you all, everybody who bought one. Your stuff is either already to you or on the way. But Etsy is, and this is like a conversation for another time because I don't want to derail where we've been, but I sold with them a few years ago and now they've really changed a lot of policies and they keep moving the goalposts. So basically it looks like I'm probably never going to get the funds from the sales that I made, which is really, really frustrating. So I've unlisted and I'm figuring out a different way to do it, but I will, I'll let people know. But if you listened to my live stream the other day where I gave an Etsy and you go to it and you wonder why there's nothing there, that's why. So
You do
we'll
it
see.
solid ground through the locals thing, or
I don't know. I'm not sure. Well, my daughter's got a website, so she's thinking about listing some stuff and I might just like get in on that and have her open me a little section. So we'll figure it out, but that's why. And if people are interested in my Etsy rant, I'll be glad to enlighten you with more detail, but not right now. Anyway, ladies, I hope you have a wonderful day and thanks so much for a great conversation.
Thank you, as always.
Thank you. Happy holidays, you guys.
You
Merry
too.
Christmas.
Yes, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. It's